Today, we are doing outfield part one because we're going to have a heavy outfield breakdown. There's a lot of outfield. There's lots of deep position to get to, obviously. There's a million of them. And you also have to roster about like 6 or 7 of them, probably in most leagues. So, we're talking about outfield, big position. This is a swing position. This is a position that can win or lose a league. If we have to go to tier 6, and here you call it solid outfielder 2 out of 3, you're going to have to explain that
Sure.
tier
I was
name
just
to
saying,
me.
yeah, solid outfield. Like these are the guys. So obviously, I want like probably two outfielders at this point in the draft. Maybe if you only have one, that's fine. If you attacked pitching heavy or, you went for a position player, maybe you got a third baseman or something. This is the tier where I feel comfortable having one of these guys as my outfield 2 or 3, like my second or third outfielder. And this tier
And by
is
the way,
consistent.
just if numbers wise, there's only 17 guys ahead of this tier, right?
Yeah.
So to think that you'd have two outfielders at that point, probably not realistic. You hope you have one, but you're saying one of these guys could be your second outfielder.
Yeah. And it depends on league size. Like, let me
Yeah,
just tell
again,
you,
but
Remy, if
17, if your average league size is 12 teams, 17, that means one and a half of the teams are going to have, two outfielders at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And if I have 5 outfield spots in my on my roster that I need to fill, I'm probably going to attack 2 outfielders in my first 5 picks, maybe even 4. Like I don't want to be left out in the
I mean,
dust with
that's why it's
outfield.
such a big position. That's
Mhm.
what we mentioned right at the top. So who do you have? You have a bunch of guys in this tier, so list them for me.
So I have Josh Lowe, and his ADP starts at 74. So Josh Lowe, Christian Yelich, Kyle Schwarber, Brian Reynolds, Nick Castellanos, Spencer Steer, Seiya Suzuki, and Lane Thomas. And Lane Thomas's ADP is about 108. So from 74 to 108, I think a lot of these guys can kind of be clumped together. They obviously bring different skill sets. So, Schwarber is a lot different than Elaine Thomas, right? And so just knowing how to build your team at this point is important. But I think all of these guys can be clumped together because, again, if they're your second or third outfielder, I'm probably okay with it.
Who's your favorite from this group?
My favorite is going to be, maybe it's the bias, but I think Seiya Suzuki is going
Yeah,
to return the
it is the
best.
bias.
I
No, I'm
think
kidding.
I think out of the value, like the ADP, I think he's going to return the best value. I mean, he's at 106, so he's going 2 picks ahead of Lane Thomas and 30 picks behind Josh Lowe. Give me Seiya because I think people still don't know how good of a hitter he is. Even last year with Cody on the team, there were many people in the organization that think and thought Seiya Suzuki is the best hitter that the Cubs have. Like, I don't think that there's any question about it. I think he hits for power. He's going to hit for average. I think he finished last year on a torrid streak. Like he was just red hot. So I think we're going to see more of that streak kind of last throughout the season next year. He was kind of injured for a little bit of the first part of the year too. So I think it took him a while to get his groove back. So this 106 price is just because we haven't seen a full season of Seiya Suzuki where he was really kind of clicking. And I think this is the year. I 106, I'm all over that price.
Yep, I like it too. Obviously, we talked about Kyle Schwarber on a previous episode, and Nick Castellanos. Those are two of my favorite guys. Everyone knows how I feel about the guys out in Philly. If Lane Thomas can take that next step, he feels like a guy who can because he's so young. That again, what do you say, 108 is his ADP? So like, it feels like
Yep.
maybe he could take that next step. Brian Reynolds, I almost feel like he signed to stay there long term and he still has that name, but it's just like feels like he's such a nothing at this point. No? And
No, I love him. I love Brian Reynolds at this price.
really?
Yeah.
Like I
Be-
feel like I don't know, is he returning the value of the name that he's given? So who's your least favorite value in this group?
it's so
It's not
hard.
Brian Reynolds.
No, it's not Brian Reynolds and my computer's frozen. I think only because of the price. I think it is Josh Lowe. I know that that's probably like Josh Lowe could
Yeah, but
definitely
again, you're
make
talking about a guy who's 74 versus right, like 30
right, and
something picks ahead. So
that's my point, right? And
yeah.
so if you're giving me that 30-point discount, I'm just going to take Seiya Suzuki or Lane Thomas because the chances that Josh Lowe jumps into the next tier, either tier 5 or tier 4, I'm just gonna take Seiya Suzuki for 30 picks cheaper at that point. And that's not any knock on Josh Lowe. He went 20-30 last year, but there's a lot of indications that maybe he's not going to hit 20 home runs again. I think the speed's legit, and that definitely helps him out. But I wouldn't be surprised if he only hit 15 home runs this year. And I think that it just kind of not scares me, but for the price, I'm out.
And for part two of this episode, of the outfield episode, we're going to do a mega best value, worst value, sleepers, prospects at each one of these spots. So we'll talk about all that stuff. And so, that's something that's going to come into play. The ADP is going to be a major factor when we talk about those things. And we'll also, of course, give you our top 10 on that episode. But as we move along on this episode, we have two more tiers left to get to. Then we'll wrap it up and we'll send you on your week on a beautiful Monday morning, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Tier 7 of the outfield, you have 3 to 4 territories. So you like all those previous guys as your top 2 to 3. And now it's guys who, okay, you need your third or fourth outfielder. And again, a little bit shallow. You want to have a third or fourth outfielder by this point, but the point is there might not be 3 or 4 outfielders for every team in your league. So if you're supplementing elsewhere, if you have maybe Freddie Freeman, and that's why you only have 2 of these outfielders at this point, you say, okay, that's worth it. You have one of the best guys in the league. But if on the other hand you have like Matt Olson and only one of these outfielders, it's like,
Hey,
oh shoot.
watch the Matt Olson slander.
Yeah, exactly. I just did that just to throw that little jab
Yeah,
in there.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. Or if you went pitching heavy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But let's say you have this average team, the third or fourth outfielder. Here's a bunch of guys that you like as your third or fourth outfielder, and your first one is an interesting one.
Yeah. So at this point in the draft, 25 outfielders are about off the board, give or take. Lane Thomas is the 25th off the board at 108. And then I start this tier with Jordan Walker, who's going at pick 112 on average. Love Jordan Walker. And then after that, it goes George Springer, 117, Esteury Ruiz at 121, Evan Carter at 124, Teoscar Hernandez at 129, and Anthony Santander is at 137.
I think
I
Santander had a bit of a fluke year last year. Like it was abnormally good. I know he's been good his whole career, but I thought last year was kind of off the charts relative to what he was, and he might lose playing time. I feel like there's so many young bats in that Baltimore lineup that scares me a little bit, right?
No, not for me at least. I think Santander is I'm probably the best value for me in this territory. Because
Not
again,
Teoscar Hernandez.
I like Teoscar. I
I
think
think
Teoscar
Teoscar's so underrated. Like when you look at his numbers versus like the name value that he has, I think he's so underrated.
and that's why I like Santander is because Santander doesn't have the name value. He's not pushed up by his name value, but
Yeah,
I mean, the last 2 seasons he had 28 home runs and then 33 home runs, and that team is so good and it's only going to get better. And I think his
so true.
position is locked in. I think he is going
Have you
to,
seen Colton Cowser in spring training?
yeah.
That dude can freaking rake.
I mean, all their guys, it's
Yeah.
just such a fun
And he
team to
looks like
watch.
Colton Cowser. Like, how old is he? He looks like he's
I think he's
30.
19 or
I
something. I
know. And
think
he
he's
looks like a
19.
30-year-old. He's like this big, like bulky, like looks like a grown-ass man. It's ridiculous.
And then they have Jackson Holiday, who's
Who looks like a child.
is
Yeah.
Colton Cowser is 23, so he's a little bit older than
Oh,
I thought he
okay.
was.
That's fair because when I saw him today, I was like, damn. And I've always heard the name and all these guys, Colton Cowser, and there's a name I'm blanking on right now, but yeah, I remember just reading about them last year when I was doing sports updates in Baltimore when they were reporting to camp, and everyone was really excited. It's not Esteury Ruiz, it's Heston Kierstead,
Yep,
also
Heston
another guy that
Kjerstad.
they
Yeah,
were big on.
I'm a huge Kobe Mayo fan. I've been seeing a lot of
Yeah,
people comment on our stuff. They love Kobe Mayo. I'm a huge Kobe Mayo fan. I hope he gets playing time this year. There's just so many mouths in that organization, but I just
and by
like
the way, they're all
Santander
just going to get
because
extended to long-term deals
yeah,
because they have new ownership and they have Mike Elias in there who's going to run it the right way. And they're going to be a dynasty forever. And the Yankees are going to suck forever. And if you don't believe that, well, listen to my 5-hour show that I did this morning on WFAN because that's pretty much what I talked about for 5 hours. Talked about a bunch of other stuff. I wasn't worried about the Knicks when the show started. Well, I'm glad that I did the show before the Jalen Brunson injury because I would have just been depressed like I am right now. This is the Jordan flu game for me. I slept for 3 hours. I was on the air for 5 hours this morning on WFAN. My voice is shot, but I'm fighting through. This is
We
what we do.
appreciate you. We
Yeah,
appreciate you, Rami.
exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for coming
Um,
through.
Jordan Walker was inconsistent last year. Why do you think he'll take that next step this year?
Jordan Walker is going to be the reason, and we see this all the time. This is exactly why I'm not quitting on Anthony Volpe. It's because sometimes it just takes time. And Jordan Walker did not have a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. He
I didn't
was
say bad. I said inconsistent.
no. And I don't think I mean, he's 20 years old in the major
Yep.
leagues and he put up above average WRC plus. I'm going to take that. And I think he has all of the tools necessary. He was my probably second best value in this behind Anthony Santander. Jordan Walker going at 112 does feel like it's going to return some positive value because I think, again, the fact that he put up, and yeah, it was inconsistent, but the fact that over the full season or over the time that he was up, he put up above average numbers tells me that his floor is also very safe, right? Not only are we talking about a guy who has a ceiling of a top 20 fantasy player, but he was an above average hitter last year at 20 years old. So I think
Yep.
he's only going to get better. I mean, the Cardinals are going to be good. So yeah, he was my second best
So
value.
I'm gonna put your biases to the test right here.
Sure.
Seiya Suzuki at 106 or Jordan Walker at 112. Where you go? What's the better value?
It is probably Jordan Walker at 112. Just because I think Jordan Walker does return his
Well, then your tier
potential
list
to
is a
return.
sham. No, no,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, I think Suzuki's floor is higher.
Yes,
That
I
is my,
know, I
and
agree.
that's why you know that I love the floor plays, and so that's why I put him just a step below. But I think they're both great
I
values.
want you to draft this year. I want you to draft completely based on floor, and then everyone to just be at their floor and see how mediocre your team is. That would just be so entertaining for me because
Okay,
it's like
but I'm
then
gonna
it's
be on the waiver wires. That's what's important. That's why I draft for floors. I'm gonna find the hot guys, the hot hitters, and
you know
I'm
what?
gonna
Fine. You'll probably finish the year with a better record than me. First of all, the draft, I don't even know I'm gonna do it. Like, when are we starting it?
that'll be next weekend. We're gonna start our draft.
Oh my God.
So you got some time to prep, see where you're
I know, but
picking.
it's just like I can't do the slow draft thing. I might have you pick some picks for me. I'm not even kidding. I might give you
Okay.
my login.
Okay. Yeah, just let me
I
know. I
might.
mean, I
Yeah,
actually
you better
don't know.
not
I think
sabotage
that
me.
might be like a conflict of interest. I don't know if I should be doing that. We'll have to
Well,
see.
okay. Uh, it'll be if I'm like unavailable for some reason. You know what I mean? It's not going to be because, you know, I'm not trying to tank the league.
You
I
want to you
want
want
to
a
pick my own
co-manager
team.
maybe? Maybe we find you a co-manager.
Oh man, do I want a co-manager? But then I have to pretend like I care about their opinion and stuff. Like when it comes to like trades and waiver
Do you not
wire
care about
stuff.
my opinion when we're talking about these kinds of things? No, I'm
No,
just
I
kidding.
value your opinion, and that's why I would have you help me.
Yeah, I
But I
don't think I
wouldn't
could do
want a
that.
co-manager that I have to consult on every little thing. I'm just saying for the
That's
draft,
fair.
because it's a slow draft, and it could be it's going to be my pick at a moment's notice, and I don't know when that's going to be, and I may be unavailable. I might need you to step in. But when it comes to like actual in-season decisions, I don't want to
Right.
be tied to someone else. I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair.
We'll have to
We'll have to learn how to set up the queue and everything. We'll get your
yeah,
queue
we
in
exactly.
order.
We'll have to get the board to vote on it is what I'm trying to say. So
Sure.
is the board you? Are you the board?
I like
Who's the
to think
commissioner? Are you the
I
commissioner?
am the commissioner, but I
Yeah.
like to
You
think
run a
that
tight
everyone
ship.
has a say. I don't want to ever
You don't
push the
run a
people's
dictatorship. I
voices down.
got you.
No, absolutely not. I think that's not fun. I want this to be
Yeah,
fun. This should be enjoyable.
I agree with you. And if we had like a one shot, one night draft, it probably would have been enjoyable. I'm
Well,
kidding.
actually, and it's sad
No.
because there was a draft today with I don't know if you saw in our Slack chat, but there was a fantasy baseball draft that happened today. Like there's a league with the just baseball people that I joined.
Really?
Yeah,
How did I
and
not get invited to
it
that?
was in the general
They
chat. I don't
they
know.
literally know. They're like, yeah, Rami's just here to host. He doesn't actually know anything
I
about
was in the
fantasy
chat. You
baseball.
could have seen
No,
it.
I think I mean today I died pretty much when I got home at like 11 something a.m. after so I hosted the show from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then um and then after that I stayed to like clip some of the stuff and like edit some of my audio. So I stayed at WFN until about like 9:30, 9:45. and I took the train home, so I didn't get home till like 11:15. So I got home at 11:15 a.m. and I just was dead for 4 hours.
Yeah, fell
So
asleep. Sure, right.
yeah. And I'm still like sleepwalking through this. All right, last tier, and let's wrap this up as we
Yeah.
talk about me mid-death.